I'm Miwa Messer. I'm the producer and host of Poured Over, and the set looks a little different because Jessica B. Harris and I were going to try and do this live in store, and we can't because dates were not aligning, and so we thought, we could do it over Zoom, or we could hang out on comfy sofas in a part of the office that we're hanging out.
Friday afternoon.
We're hanging
good.
out on sofas, because this is how the schedule's worked out. But for those of you who might actually not know, and that might be like 6 of you, Jessica Harris is one of our great food historians. Food historian. I like the idea that there is a job for a food historian. Author of now 13 books.
Now 13.
Okay, the new cookbook. Since we're playing with video too, there we go.
Okay, video.
Braided Heritage. So we are going to talk about the cookbooks, but we're also going to talk about food in general and writing about food and traveling to talk about food. Because I think a lot of folks do know you from High on the Hog, the Netflix series, which is based on the book that you wrote more than a minute ago. When did
a minute and a half ago,
yeah,
2011.
Oh, wow. Okay. So 2011. And the series started in what, 20 or 21?
2020, November of 2020.
Okay, November of 2020. And I remember watching it multiple times when it first came out, because it was a moment when none of us could travel.
Bless you, yes. Stuck like a rat in a trap. Had to watch it.
There you go. And I love the idea that the book was adapted. I mean, how long did it take you to write High on the Hog?
Oh, gosh. Probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Interesting in that the editor, Kathy Belden, whom I adore, sort of said, I've been reading your stuff, and because the head notes on my recipes kept getting longer and longer and longer and longer. And she said, I think you can write narrative. I think we can do this. So it was a process. Tears were involved. I mean, snot was involved. There was a lot of crying. But it happened. And so she sort of shepherded me through the process.
I would not have expected, having read it a couple of times now, it does not seem like it was, I don't know. It's a fun, smart read, and you can either read it linearly or you can dip in and out depending on what you're looking for. And the structure, every chapter has sort of a 3-act thing
like
happening.
Gaul divided into 3 parts.
Yes, exactly. And I was definitely smarter after I'd read it. That much I know. But you've also written a memoir.
Yep, and that one involved the real tears.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I may have conflated the 2 books, but there were massive amounts of tears involved in the writing of that.
Still glad you did it. So apologies for the massive amounts of tears, but I'm really glad you wrote that. But how did we get here? How did you end up becoming a food historian? Because I'm not entirely sure that was the original track.
I don't know that there was an original track. I think one of the things that happens these days is, young people, and that's pretty much anybody under the age of 70 at this point, set intentions and, I'm going to and I will and I shall, and I didn't do any of that. I was kind of will o' the wisp.
Okay.
And initially wanted to be an actress.
Okay.
Went to the High School of Performing Arts. Fame I'm going to live forever. Then went to a college where there was no theater department. That was parental control. You will go here, that way you will not major in theater. Therefore, you will find something that will enable you to pay for yourself. I majored in French. So this is ping pong. Come out, and it's the black arts kind of movement. And so became, with some of the friends from high school, a member of a group that was going to try to take over a newspaper and make it a newspaper for the black arts. Didn't work. I was the only one who kept going and turning in articles, and that's how I started my career as a writer. Totally unintended, and that's just how it worked.
Yeah, but you have to have an innate level of curiosity, right? Not, you have lots of questions, and I know this because I've known you for a minute, and lots of questions, lots of, let's see where this takes us. Let's see what the connective tissue looks like, right?
I'm a nosy broad.
Yeah, okay. Nosy broad works.
Okay, so the whole thing is, I then flash even further back than the performing arts. I went to the UN school.
Right.
Therefore, was very curious about other cultures.
Yeah.
And actually, I think I've always been an outlander.
Explain that.
I don't fit in.
Okay.
I don't fit in anywhere, so I can fit in everywhere. And I mean, it's very complex because it means I can spend an awful lot of time, curled up in a fetal position going, oh, everybody loves me, I don't belong anywhere, what's the matter? But then I can, get off a plane and maybe find a connection. I mean, I was so surprised I went to China, actually, in 2019 probably, because 2020 we were getting locked in. It was 2019. It was 2019. And I was so surprised by the connections I could find. And I also have a kind of slight gift for language.
I was about to say, I've heard you speaking French and navigating in places where I was like, oh.
Yeah,
hi.
no, I've got French. French I know I've got, but...
How many other languages?
Oh, wait a minute. Let me see if I can come up with it. Somehow, I've got French fluency. Yeah. Spanish, it ain't elegant, but it'll get me around.
Okay. You won't starve.
No, not by a long shot. I can say, gazpacho, and jamon, and manzanilla. So those are the three I need. I'm good. I've got Portuguese, but that's less elegant than the Spanish, but I wouldn't starve to death.
Okay.
I can probably fake Italian because of the Romance languages.
Right,
you get them all. At some point, the little light bulb goes off, and it's like, oh, if you do this to that, then you get Italian. About 100 words of Wolof, maybe 100 words of Yoruba, and then I speak what I call international hand jive.
Okay, which is?
You jump up and down on one foot long enough, somebody will say, will point you to the bathroom. It's like they'll figure it out. Okay. So that's that.
You started, though, with book reviews and theater reviews, if I remember correctly, right?
I did.
And then you become a travel editor.
Right. Well, the book reviews were first, probably. And well, actually, no, the theater reviews were first. Okay. The theater reviews were first because, of course, I was a theater major, and the doctor in the Dr. Jessica B. Harris is, the doctorate is in performance studies from NYU. Right. So theater. Then from theater to books, and then books into features. Right. And then travel. Okay. And then the travel gets me into food. Which makes perfect sense, but you do learn to write by being a critic. In a way, I think so. I'm not even sure whether I think of myself as a writer writ large. Okay. I think of myself sometimes as a journalist. Not saying, and to me that's sort of a differentiation. Yeah. And I'm not even sure what I mean by that. But again, it's the Outlander thing. There is a whole community of writers. They do, writers residencies, and they do. Right. There's a world of writing with food, and particularly food journalism. When I was coming up in it, that wasn't a world. It didn't exist. That I know. And so that's the Outlander part. I'm an outlander to the world of writers, although y'all have been very kind and have allowed me to sort of poke my nose in the tent, so I'm happy about that. It's a word that I am learning to accept, but that I'm not resisting it. I'm just having difficulty admitting it. I think, though, that the body of work, when I think of your body of work, it goes beyond journalism, because you have, certainly the memoirs, certainly the histories, certainly writing cookbooks is a very specific art. We have all experienced cookbooks where perhaps they needed a second pass. And I'm not talking about the recipe. The recipes get tested, but second pass for voice or experience, or I like to read cookbooks before I go to bed. Okay. And it's a thing that I picked up from my mom. Wow. Right. And it's not every night, but there are times where, and especially when you're a bookseller, the brain doesn't always shut off. Tell me about it. It doesn't always shut off. And not just booksellers. Really don't want to be on my phone all the time. So, and then there's some cookbooks that are beautiful, but I know I'm never going to cook from. Yeah.
Never. And I'm not going to list them here, but I think we've all experienced sort of that's a beautiful thing, and I would like to be able to sort of use the information, but that one step is actually 37 steps. I will never own those ingredients. I don't even know where to buy them. And I live in New York City. It's not like I can't find them.
Right. Or I don't want to buy them.
Exactly. But I can still read it and think, oh, how could I take that piece and I'm going to use cumin for an example, because cumin cuts across culture, right?
It does.
I mean,
well, you've got cumino in the Hispanic world, and then you've got the cumin of the North African foods and the Middle Eastern foods. So you've got that whole wide.
And it's so good.
It is.
It's so good. So learning how to play with all of those things, I kind of need. And yes, there are certain apps that I keep on my phone because sometimes it's easier to just look it up on your phone and be like, okay, it is actually. But I'm still one of those people who, when I cook, I'm not a baker because you have to be precise.
Oh, left brain, right brain. I can't bake.
I
no.
Can't bake. My dude can bake, and he quite enjoys it. But you can fix that. You can be slightly off while you're cooking, but you can fix it.
Right. Well, I mean, I contend that if you put together, and I mean, I'm not a baker. My mother could bake from scratch, without recipe. Which
okay.
I was, which probably why I can't, because I just grew up with it. It was too, it was magic. I contend though that if you put together 3 or 4 ingredients that you like, and you like them, you're probably going to come up with something that you like, unless you really screw it up badly. I mean, but I mean, I am of the Julia Childs, mastering the art of French cooking era and age. And I remember trying to do coq au vin at one point, and I didn't have pearl onions. I used black-eyed peas. It wasn't coq au vin.
No, but I would have eaten.
But it was good.
I would have totally eaten it.
It was good. So I mean, I think it's about the figuring out what to substitute, and I also think that's the way a lot of new recipes get born.
Oh, completely. But I love the idea, too, of food reflecting who we are and the evolution of food. I was thinking about this a lot this morning, knowing full well that I was going to sit down with you. But, I mean, I don't remember eating Thai food until sort of the 80s. Because I grew up in New England. I remember the first Thai restaurant in New York City, which was on Bleecker Street around the corner from where I lived. It was a Royal Thai restaurant. And there used to be, when I moved to Brooklyn, there was the only Cambodian restaurant in the city at that point. I mean, and there are those sort of touch points in certainly the restaurant history, which then I think talks about the stories of migration that are involved in New York City. Yep. I was at the Whitney a couple weeks ago with a pal, and we walked by what used to be Florent, and I still miss that place. But even watching neighborhoods shift. And you grew up in Queens and have lived in Brooklyn for more than a minute, but you spent a lot of time in the West Village. I spent about a decade. Right. And it was the good decade. Yeah, I was about to say. I've read those stories. West Village in the 70s. Right. It was the good decade. It was the bad decade, but it was a very different West Village. The Women's House of Detention was still up when I moved. Right? Yeah. Yeah. I walk by that corner all the time, and I see that garden, and I think there used to be a jail there. Yeah, a big old jail. And I don't know if you're probably too young to have seen it. There was a play by Melvin Van Peebles, Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death. I've heard about it. Yeah, I've never seen it performed. In it, there's a scene because the women used to stand out and shout up. Yep. And there was a whole scene in Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death of the women shouting up and down at each other. It's wild, though, when I think about sort of the evolution of the West Village and the food. Right. And the people. It was Italian when I moved, and it was very, very, very Italian. Balducci's. Yep. I remember Old Man Balducci. For some reason, he liked me. And there was a real Balducci. There was a real Old Man Balducci. He was a little old Italian guy. And he would always slip an orange or two in my bag when I was leaving. So, I mean, I remember that very clearly. It was right on the corner. Yep. And then there used to be up on Greenwich Avenue, there was a restaurant called Angelina's. Yep. All of the little nonna, all of the grandmas from Little Italy, once they got a little, elevated, they came up to what they established the West Village, why we got Zito's Bakery, why all of those things were and some of them still are there. Yep. But then, then it started morphing. There was,
Alfredo Viazzi, Cafe de Alfredo,
Right.
Tartaria de Alfredo, all of those kinds of restaurants that were then making Italian food different. It became something other than just the red sauce Italian that I grew up with.
Right.
And changed into something else.
The evolution of American food, though, is wild to me. I mean, listening to my dad and his siblings talk about sort of how boring and bland there was a lot of pot roast and a lot of boiled things and
Chicken pot pie.
but the variety now, and that's partially what the new cookbook is about.
The new cookbook is a little bit about that, but it's about the threads.
Right. Okay. We should bring in the new cookbook because it's really fun to read.
Thank you.
And it's a good idea. I mean, we start with indigenous populations, First Nation people.
Mm-hmm.
It was the Dutch where I was kind of like, oh, right, the Dutch have a cuisine. I don't think
it's
Dutch cuisine.
No, we don't.
No?
But if you look at the sort of founding of the country
Right.
from the East, you had the native peoples, the indigenous
Right.
peoples. Then you get the Spaniards, the British, the Dutch, who had dominion over a large swath of the mid-Atlantic,
Right.
and then finally the French. And so those are the cuisines that I look at, but we get all kinds of things. The thing that blew me out of the water was we get coleslaw from the Dutch.
I always thought of coleslaw as from sauerkraut more than it never would have occurred to me until
No, exactly. Coleslaw. And
until I learned from you.
Cabbage salad.
Which good coleslaw is delightful.
It's wonderful. I mean,
Murdered in mayonnaise, not so great, but
I like, my mother's, I didn't particularly care for my mother's coleslaw, but I kind of am a partisan of a good deli coleslaw.
but that's not murdered in mayonnaise.
No, that's the point. I think that's absolutely the
mayonnaise,
point.
I like mayonnaise. I have a cousin who just cannot abide mayonnaise. She just absolutely, the idea of mayonnaise drives her around the bend. But when I was a kid, the Japanese use mayonnaise as sort of a condiment.
Yeah.
And so we would have broccoli and mayonnaise. And of course my friends thought this was completely bizarre. And I'm like, you don't eat broccoli with mayonnaise? Never could. But I really like Japanese mayonnaise. It's really good.
I've never had that.
Kewpie.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Kewpie like Kewpie dolls?
Only it's in a weird squishy tube. And it's
Hopefully it looks like doesn't look like a Kewpie doll.
When I was a kid, it kind of did. Now it's just like
a tube.
Yeah, it's...
Phooey.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, well.
But it tastes pretty good.
Okay. When I get back.
Yeah, okay.
You be treating me to some Kewpie.
I think I know a place where I can do that.
Okay. Okay.
But I love the idea that American food pulls from all of these different pieces.
From all of these, and then the third hank of hair, if you will, in the braid is African American.
Right.
So you get all of those things and you start putting them together and you see all kinds of different things and how so much of what we eat is so conjoined as to virtually be inseparable unless you start, doing kind of culinary DNA tracing.
But I never would have put the Dutch and the all apologies to listeners, but I don't necessarily think of those as cuisine, right? Like,
well, this whole question of what is a cuisine is another thorny one.
Okay.
Because who gets to define them?
Right.
And how, what makes it a cuisine as opposed to just that's what they cook.
Right.
But, it's what happens when you put a fancy French word. It's cuisine. It's no longer cooking. He's a chef. He's not a cook. You do all of that, and you've already created some kinds of distances that probably were not initially there.
Right.
Dutch food. What do we get from the Dutch? Well, we get cookies.
Right.
And I'm using the term Dutch, but it's probably Neerlandish or Netherlandish, so the Low Countries in that sense. But we get cookies. We get waffles.
Right.
We get the coleslaw in question. All of those things are so... Where would Christmas be for so many people without cookies? And yes, other people do cookies. I mean, it's...
Right.
But the Dutch are kind of probably the ones that brought here.
Right.
And so we get all of those kinds of things that happen. Then with the African Americans, it's not so much ingredients, although we do have, it's not so much dishes maybe as ingredients.
Yeah.
We've got where would summer be anywhere in this country without watermelon?
Right.
Native to the African continent. For many Southerners, that field pea, some sort, whether it's a black-eyed pea, a lady pea, or whatever, is essential on New Year's Day for luck. Well, the idea that it brings luck is African, probably. And then the pea itself is.
Right.
And of course, the big daddy of them all for me is the okra. It's not in every Louisiana gumbo, but it's in a whole lot of them.
I grew up outside of Boston, and okra was not
a
regular thing. But when we would go to Japan in the summers, we ate a lot of okra. And I actually thought okra was Japanese. I had no idea.
I can understand, because the thing that was weird on that aforementioned trip to China, my first meal in China was okra and barbecue.
Yeah.
It was barbecue duck, but okra, and it was like, okay, this is an interesting kind of juxtaposition of these things that I think of as African and Southern.
Right.
So, it's and that's part of the fun of food, is just the way things turn up and how they turn up on the plate.
Food can be so much fun. I mean, when you're learning to like cook for other people too, and you haven't really got a clue, and you're following exactly the rest, and when you finally learn to sort of jettison the instructions, and you're like, oh right, this works.
Right.
And it's not just substituting, but it's more like, oh right, I get the idea of the
I know
measurement.
what to do. Yeah, I got this now. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's also when you're following that thing so closely and you make your first mistake.
Yeah, I remember a lot of those.
And the doorbell is ringing, and
Yeah.
it's like, well, I can't go out and shop again, so I guess I'm gonna have to fix this, or bogart my way through this, or whatever. And that, I think, is where you also start to cook, if you will, because then you're kind of in free fall and you've got to do something.
There was a year where I was learning how to do Thanksgiving. I was in Chicago and everyone was in Boston. My roommate and I had both said, well, we'll both stay in Chicago. I didn't understand quite defrosting.
Oh.
And there may have been a turkey that was too large, because I also didn't understand that maybe you should go get a turkey before 2 days before.
Yep.
We were baby booksellers. It was Thanksgiving. We didn't really know what we were doing. We ate a lot of sides.
I was getting ready to say, because there was probably a stone cold, hard, frozen packet of giblets in the middle of that cavity.
That, and there was a last minute phone call to my mother saying, so people are showing up and it's frozen and we're eating in the middle of the day, which not my preference, but whatever.
Yeah.
Negotiating with roommates. And I said, I don't know it. And my mother said, okay, well, here, get the water. And I'm glad I learned.
Yes, but it was stressful.
We ate a lot of sides.
Yep. Well,
We ate a lot of sides, and I have no problem with that. But it was a good lesson to learn sort of early on with this was okay.
Yep.
We tried.
The proverbial clutch the pearls moment.
But there is something to be said about having folks into your space and cooking for them. I mean, it's really kind of a charming old way to show a lot of love.
Entertaining.
Yeah, it's really
and
good.
Not in the large and lavish sense.
No.
But just the idea of come by.
Yeah.
I think these days we are all, and I think it's something to do with COVID and something to do with other things that I will not mention, but
Right.
we are all desirous of community.
Yes.
And need it. I mean, profoundly need it on so many levels.
Right.
That idea of come by.
Yeah.
I mean, it may be, I don't know, I don't want to say Cheerios, but just come by.
Yeah.
Let's share a meal. Let's have something together that bonds us, that gives us a communality, that gives us community, because I think that's something that we are all craving right through now.
And cheese and crackers is a meal.
Absolutely.
Cheese and crackers over the sink. That
cheese by itself is a meal. You don't even need the crackers.
I have been known to eat cheese for breakfast. I'm not a big breakfast person.
I am not a breakfast person.
And I know I'm
at
supposed to
all.
be a breakfast person. We should all be
It's the
breakfast
most important meal of the
It
day.
is.
But I never have it.
Can't do it. But occasionally, especially if I'm on the West Coast, I end up eating string cheese for breakfast.
Oh, okay.
I keep New York hours, so I
Then
mean, if I'm eating at a weird hour, so I can
Eat weird
participate,
food. Yeah. Eat whatever
kind
is
of-
appropriate to that hour.
And sometimes if you're on planes a lot, you know this. You get served a meal at a weird moment, and you just say, "Okay, I should
I'm going to eat what I can or what I can stand." Yeah.
all of it."
Absolutely.
What do you think you've learned from all of this food writing? Because I feel like there's so many things that food writing pulls from that maybe other arts don't necessarily in the same way.
I've learned some things about myself, but I've also learned tolerance.
Okay.
I will taste. I'm getting to the point, let me be honest, where I will taste anything.
Right.
But I'm also realizing that I come with some certain biases.
Right.
I swear I don't like lentils, but I don't mind lentils. I kind of do like them, but I just, somewhere in my head, I think I don't.
Mm-hmm.
For years, I used to say I can't stand capers. Then I realized, no, that was my mother who didn't like capers. I like capers.
I love anything pickled.
I love capers.
Oh, pickles.
I love capers now. It's like, how did I go for all that time without eating capers? I love capers.
Oh, that's great.
I do a sort of jazzed up spaghetti sauce with bacon, capers, anchovy stuffed olives.
yeah.
I love anchovies. Anchovies are
that weird little umami thing that happens when
they're really, anchovies
get
can
an anchovy
make
into a
anything
sauce?
good.
Wow. Had no idea until I started doing I'm pretty sure someone taught me that, but I just don't know who.
Well, it's a lot of chef's secret weapon. You know, it's like slip a couple of anchovies in there, you know,
so
and
good.
it's like, whoa, what was that?
So
It's just
good.
like a little hit of something wonderful, and you don't necessarily recognize it as that.
I would have had no idea.
Yeah.
I would have
Yeah.
had absolutely. My dad never really learned to cook, but my mother could cook, but not in the way that I do. Like,
Yeah.
made a mean lasagna.
Okay.
Really great lasagna. But a lot of,
American
working
food.
mom casserole stuff.
Yeah. No,
But her lasagnas were great.
my mother was actually a trained dietitian,
Oh, okay.
but that brings a variety of things there.
Uh-huh.
She had a better palate than I'll ever have in this lifetime. She was just amazing, and she
Okay.
could, when I was doing restaurant reviews for a while, she would be my, my secret weapon guest because she could taste something and say, "Oh, I think there's a little coriander in that."
Oh, wow.
She was
Okay.
really, 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 really good. That whole thing of how you cook and what you cook and where you cook it and how you learn to cook it. So much of that has just a immense effect on all of it.
When you were saying your mom's palate was really something, my first thought was, it sounds like the food equivalent of perfect pitch.
Yeah, it was.
That's wild. I didn't know that existed.
It was.
I had no idea.
And there are some people that they also call super tasters. I don't know that my mom was one of those. Someone who was given a test by Kikkoman.
Oh,
at
the
some
soy sauce
point.
people.
Yeah. And she could determine all of those things. She was a super taster. They ultimately
Wow.
hired her, Black American woman. And it was
wild.
just wild because she had the ability to distinguish all of those nuances in taste. I think that would be wonderful, but I also think that could be incredibly difficult.
I think I would be overwhelmed pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to live with that. I'm happy with being somewhere, I guess, in the mid-range.
The mid-range I'm good with, but there are also times too where, if you're traveling and the snack is what's presented, I don't need to know all of the details. Sometimes I just need to eat a thing.
Sometimes it's better not to have all the details.
I have.
Yeah.
There are sometimes where it's just like, I'm going to eat that, and I don't need to know more than what I'm about to be told.
I think my favorite go-to was blood sausage in an open market in Kenya.
There you go.
And it was like, here, taste this. And it was a matter of hospitality and, politeness, if you will. So it's like, I'll choke this down. Hopefully I won't be at the hospital. But the cast iron stomach kicked in and I was good.
See, it's a useful thing to have.
Yeah, it is.
It is really.
It really is.
But you also, I'm going to go back to the West Village for a second because I'm thinking about something that Eddie Glaude told me years ago. We did an interview for Begin Again, his book about Baldwin. And I asked him, Baldwin came back from Paris. He was really happy in a lot of ways in Paris. And he comes back to the States at a really weird moment in American history. And I said, why? Why would you And Eddie just looks at me and said, Mama. And part of that, honestly, was Baldwin's mother's cooking, which I had not quite considered the power of, because I was thinking, as younger people do, about bigger picture things, but that's a really powerful moment. I mean, Proust and his Madeleines.
Well,
all of
exactly.
this,
I mean, but food and memory.
Yeah.
food and memory is extraordinary. I mean, at Performing Arts, we used to do sense memory.
Right.
And then just food memory. Some smells can take you right back and taste as much as anything.
Yeah.
I mean, and taste perhaps is more, I don't know if it's more ephemeral than smell, but it is, I don't know, less quantifiable perhaps than smell, because it's so I guess smell is too, so I'm just blathering. But the whole idea of that particular taste of your mother's fried chicken, or your mother's greens, or your grandmother's pickled watermelon rind, or whatever, and that spice combination that is unique to that individual. And it's unique because not just of the mix, but because of the brand of spices chosen, because of time and place, because of all of those things. And then when you put them together, that whole thing is just so extraordinary. You know, I have told this, so I can't claim that it's the first time anybody's hearing it. After my mother died, I found a ramekin of her mac and cheese frozen in the freezer, her freezer.
Oh, I understand.
And kept it. Every year I scrape risking ptomaine and God knows what all else now, because she's been dead for 25 years. So this is 25 years worth of frozen mac and cheese that I will scrape off once a year and sample. And it's, you know, it's kind of dwindling down, but it's sort of like the magic spaghetti pot. You know, it's like there seems to be enough to catch me through until I'm maybe having mac and cheese with my mom again. But I think it's almost the knowing that it was hers. Certainly at this point, it's so freezer burned and everything else that it probably doesn't have that taste. But in my head, it does.
No, I absolutely understand. There are a couple of things. My mom used to fry smelts.
Ooh, yum.
Which I really liked. And I can't for the life of me figure out. I've tried to reconstruct. I like to reverse engineer things when I can. And sometimes I'm really right. And miso is usually the answer.
Ah, okay.
Miso is the answer to a lot of things where I'm like, oh.
Okay.
When I'm trying to recreate a flavor thing. I will also say miso and butter make a really great pasta sauce.
Oh, wow. Okay, got to try that.
I promise that will become a thing.
Okay.
Throw a little crab meat on it.
Ooh, well, I can't do that, but...
Okay, but that's... Oh, right,
yeah,
I forgot.
I got that ugly shellfish allergy.
Yeah, that won't work. We'll figure something else out for you.
Yeah,
or you could just do miso and...
find some smelts.
Yeah, smelt works. You shared an orbit, though, with Baldwin and Maya Angelou and Toni Morrison.
I did. The thing is that I was, as I think I put it, the tail end of the tail of the kite of their friendship. I was, in the room where it happened, but I wasn't making the decisions that made it happen. I was just in the room. And it was an extraordinary place to be.
Right.
I mean, I was very, very young. I was 25 or something like that. Maya, and the fact that I can publicly articulate it as Maya as opposed to Dr. Angelou is one of the indicators how long I knew her, because I knew her before she was Dr. Angelou at that point.
Right.
And she gave me grace and allowed me to call her Maya, although I learned the third form of address when referring to her to others. I would say Dr. Angelou. But it was just an extraordinary time. And again, that's part of perhaps why I don't call myself a writer.
Okay, that's fair.
To get back to where because they were community.
Right.
They loved each other. They fought for and with each other. And, they supported each other, which was a very, very different thing. And it was a tight community. I mean, it was all of those bold-faced names of the period in the world of the arts.
Right.
Because it went from Maya, and now I'm going to do it again, and James Baldwin.
Yep.
And I got grace on all of this because of my friend, Sam Floyd, who was Baldwin's best friend. And so, I don't ever want to feel like I'm claiming something, because everybody now has because I'm old and everybody else is kind of halfway gone or on their way out. People sort of go, oh, well, you knew. It's like, yeah, but I'm trying to think of what they would say were they here to me, because I was very much the kid.
Right.
And, I think somewhere along the line they might say, okay, you've got it. You can own us now. I mean, you're not trying to rewrite us, but you can acknowledge the fact that you did know us. And I did.
I think, too, that when you're around people who have an awareness of language...
Oh, God, yes.
It does sort of change the way... I mean, I've got some pretty smart friends in my circle, and sometimes I look at them and I'm like, I'm not sure I'm smart enough to sit at this table.
Well, that certainly happens a lot.
But it's fun to watch... not just the conversations evolve, and this comes back to being at a shared dinner table, right?
Right.
And how the conversation evolves,
the verbal ping pong,
all of it, it's so much fun.
The verbal ping pong and the level of language,
right?
And the precision.
Yeah. Oh, the precision is important
of the language,
the
because
precision
it's not just sort of like loose, if you will, language. It's very almost clinically precise in its analytics, in its looking at events, in all of those things. It was, and with some people today who are your friends, it still is.
Right. I mean,
very, very precise. It's fun. It's not that it's not professorial.
No,
It's
not
just
at all.
it's just an integral part of who these people are or were.
I associate food with joy. I associate language with joy. There are things that, and it's not to say that the ugly stuff isn't there. This is not head in the sand kind of stuff. But there's a fundamental pleasure that I get out of both of those things.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I know it comes out of community.
Yeah, it does. And sometimes with a really good word, you can almost feel it rolling in your mouth and tasting it like food.
Right.
You can just sort of chaw on it for a while, if you will. And that kind of delight, absolute delight in language, paralleled with an equal delight with food, was kind of a great joy of certainly those times. And it's the joy that I am looking to find and perhaps recreate with getting back to entertaining.
And I think, too, if I think about sort of watching the evolution of food, so I'm thinking of this book called Provence 1970, which I've been thinking about a lot recently because it's MFK Fisher and Julia Child and James Beard and Escoffier at Child's house in Provence.
Yeah, it was in, Solius Tucas.
Yeah. My mother had those Time Life cookbooks.
Didn't everybody? I've got them.
I still have them in a box. I'm so sentimental about them. And
they're not going anywhere.
But Lawrence Vanderpost wrote the South African one, and Emily Hahn wrote the Chinese one.
You don't even realize it.
Wild. Some of the people who were... And it was great contract work. They got paid
extremely well. Extremely well.
The Japanese one, there's kaiseki, and it's a horse chestnut made out of, fish and da-da-da. And I, as a tiny person, I went to my mom and said, can we have this? And she said, absolutely not. Would you like a fish stick? And now, having had a couple of really great kaiseki dinners, oh yeah, sorry, Mom. I was not. I was 6. I didn't know. Yeah. But there's some fun stuff that you can do.
Just extraordinary. Absolutely. Why? I mean, and it's. I think those books were the things that kind of opened up.
Yeah.
The American mind.
Right.
To the foods of the world.
Sort of mid-60s, late 60s they came out? Early 70s?
I would think, yeah. The first one was the cooking of provincial France.
Yep, and I have that one. I kept
Richard Olney.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
That's the brain. It just keeps on chugging along till it finally spits it out.
But the idea that, I sort of take these... I live in a city where I can eat anything at any time.
I know. Well, it used to be any time.
Well,
We're sort of
now,
not
okay.
as late a night
All right,
town
yeah,
as
well,
we
that's
used
true.
to be.
The
I regret
sidewalks
that.
have rolled up. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I mean, we can choose from
Oh, no,
Burmese food
we
or
have
Chinese. We have a
the
million
world.
different- yeah. But the idea that, in the 50s, there was a lot of Jello. A lot
And
of Jello.
iceberg lettuce.
Oh, that was a salad.
That was lettuce.
That was a salad.
Well, remember when, well, you probably don't, but I remember when arugula came in, it was, what is that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was late to that because also, I mean, I love my parents, but arugula was not something that was registering for them.
I'm kind of using arugula almost as a catch-all
Right.
for any other kind of lettuce than iceberg, any kind of a meal other than the Swanson's TV dinner with that
Babysitter food.
Yeah,
That was what we got with the babysitters.
Oh,
it was a treat.
I have to confess that during COVID, that was Thanksgiving for what
listen, I respect that
went
choice.
back and got a TV dinner
respect
kind
that
of
choice.
thing, and that was me done, and the little thing of the apple pie in the middle.
I just don't love turkey.
I'm not.
I love a roast chicken, a great roast chicken.
Great roast chicken, but I'm not. I'm a dark meat child.
Mm-hmm.
I
I'm with you on
am
that.
not a fan of roast chicken, but I do think that roasting a chicken is the test of a good cook.
I would agree with that.
I think if you can do a good roast chicken, you've got it. You've nailed it.
Yep.
More so than if you can do some fancy this, that, and the other. A good, solid roast chicken.
So what's next? I mean, obviously you can keep doing. We haven't even covered Louisiana. We haven't. I think we should take our act on the road. But
Yeah. Okay. Where are we going?
I don't know yet. I don't know.
I have some projects. I probably can't
That's fair.
talk really
That's
about
fair.
them now, but I'll be using my languages.
Oh, I like this.
Okay.
Oh, I like this. This is really good.
I'll be using my languages. I don't know if it's going to be about travel or if it's going to be about memory or both.
I don't think you can separate the two, but that's
Well,
just
yeah, but I mean immediate travel in the present
Oh, okay,
as opposed to memory of travel in the past, and I think it will be both.
Oh, I
But
like this.
it's a fun project.
I'm really looking forward to this.
I hope you like it.
I'm really looking forward to this. I have some thoughts. I have some ideas. But you know what?
I can tell you off mic, but I can't tell you
That's
on
fine.
mic.
And I'm going to ask you off mic. I am
Okay.
totally going to do that. But I am also going to say thank you so much because we are bumping up against time. And I did make you a promise about
Thank
when
you.
we might get
Have
you
we-
at the door.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, yes,
All
we
right.
did.
We have
Oh, yeah, we did.
blathered on. This has
That's
been
what
so
we
much
do.
fun.
That is what we do. And then we just cover all of this territory.
This has been so much fun.
But food is so much more than food, too.
It
That's the
is.
thing that I love
Yeah.
when I'm reading you, whether it's the memoir, whether it's the histories, whether it's the cookbooks themselves. Although I do love that photo of you and Bryant Gumbel. I was like, oh, right, the Today Show. Oh, yeah, right.
Wooler and Scott.
All of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just going to let people find that photo on their own. But the idea that food isn't just the thing that you grab on the fly as you're running down the sidewalk, that it means so much to so many of us in so many different ways.
Yeah.
And we get to reinvent it as we need to. That I love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's the world is on the plate.
Yeah, that seems like the perfect place
Yeah.
to say thank you, Jessica Harris. Professor Jessica B. Harris.
Oh goodness.
Dr.
Yeah.
Harris.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Miwa. It's been amazing. Thank you.
This was so fun.
Absolutely.
Hello, readers. It's time for another TBR Top Off. We're going to recommend a couple of great books to pick up when you stop in for your copy of Braided Heritage. I'm Mark at my Barnes & Noble in Cincinnati, but I'm going to have my book buddy Donald in Detroit kick us off. Hello, Donald.
Hi, Mark. I got a great pick here to go along with our main focus book here this week. So, food, what can't you say about food, right? Like, food is just what connects everybody. Stanley Tucci said it best in one of his memoirs, that there is no family without food, right? But there's so much more to learn and explore and understand about food, and especially when it comes to different cultures. And so when I was thinking about a book to talk about, Black Food Stories is the one that came to mind for me. I just couldn't think of anything better. It's edited by Bryant Terry. And what's fascinating about this book is it's just a mouthwatering, visually stunning, intoxicating global story of all the different types of food that feed into that culture. It's a stunning and deeply heartfelt tribute to their culinary ingenuity. Bryant Terry captures the broad and divergent voices of African American culture through the prism of food, pretty much talking to about 100 plus different people from across the country, and even literary folks as well, like Toni Morrison's got a recipe in here. There's essays about different types of food and how food plays an important role in not just family, but their communities as well. The recipes themselves are expansive and generous and are not pigeonholed by any particular type of, it's not like just, vegetarian or just meat, like it's everything. Some of the wonderful little recipes in here, avocado and mango salad, for instance, spicy pickled carrot and raw dressing. I mean, it's just endless. Sweet potato pie. I mean, who doesn't want to just... I'm honestly, I'm drooling right now, so it just sounds so delicious. But again, looking at what made sense with this particular pick was looking for a book that really talked about food beyond just how you eat it. And actually, the full title of this is called Black Food Stories, Art, and Recipes from Across the American Diaspora. So it's not just about food as a cookbook, but a food as like a history lesson on where their food comes from and how it's inspired by their culture and their art. So again, that's Black Food Stories, Art, and Recipes from Across the African Diaspora by Bryant Terry. Mark, what do you have for us?
I mean, I could just turn around and recommend that book again because, dear God, it's such a celebration. It's a beautiful book to have in your house. You can nestle it in with your cookbooks, but it's almost better served as a coffee table or even just like a countertop book in your kitchen. So good. But I do have another book that I'll talk about. But I did want to say I'm very, very excited for Braided Heritage. High on the Hog is so excellent. If you guys have not checked this show out, please do. It's a celebration. It's informative. It's gorgeous, and it will make you hungry. It's so good. Harris, I think, is a genius. And it's just this beautiful culmination of food and culture and flavor. But it brought me back to one of my favorite books that I have in my kitchen, and that is the Encyclopedia of Spices and Herbs, An Essential Guide to the Flavors of the World by the wonderful Padma Lakshmi. First of all, I love her so much. She's brilliant. The way that she thinks and talks about food is always a beautiful thing. But I really wanted to talk about this book because her show, Taste the Nation, has a very similar feel to High on the Hog in that it highlights the immigrant contribution of American food. And she's always been such a champion of the way that flavors come from so many different places that turn into this lovely soup of American cuisine that really can never be pinned down. But also this book, dear God, it's perfect. Not only is it a handy and very comprehensive guide to pretty much every spice that you would use in cooking, it's also a way to get to know your spices more intimately. And I say that really earnestly and honestly. I think Lakshmi provides historical and cultural and culinary context to each spice, but she does so with tenderness and reverence that I think really comes through in the writing and in the research. Her love of food is very obvious in the way that she champions chefs and kitchens in the media. But this book really adds a beautiful layer as well as an important message that the flavors in our food run a lot deeper than what we just taste on the surface. So please check out the Encyclopedia of Spices and Herbs by Padma Lakshmi. Again, it's one of those books that I have had on my shelf for a very long time. I refer to it often, and it's a good little bite-sized LOL situation where you can just open to any page and just learn something new, not just about spices and foods, but about the world and the people around us. But that's it. Thanks so much for tuning in to Pour It Over. Please make sure you give us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. We've got some great things on the docket and so many to go back through and some wonderful interviews. You can also follow us on our socials at Barnes & Noble. I'm Mark. You can follow my home store at BN Westchester. Donald, where can we find you?
You can follow my store at BN Northville.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Happy reading and happy eating. Bye.
Thank you for listening. Poured Over is a Barnes & Noble production. To help other readers find us, please rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts.